Well, it's not really about that, is it? You don't have to fill your diary, but the point is that events, dear boy, as they say, will have an effect. So, for example, if Vladimir Putin decides to invade Georgia at 9 p.m. on a Friday, I'm afraid you're going to have to be taken out of your kickboxing class watching your son, or possibly the cheerleading class watching your daughter, to go and have a meeting and to discuss exactly what Britain's response is going to be. Let's talk to Kevin Schofield, political editor at the Huffington Post. Kevin, very good morning to you.
Morning, mate.
I know you'll probably accuse me of being a little bit churlish here, but I mean, you can't say I'm not going to work after 6 p.m. on a Friday if you're going to be Prime Minister, can you?
No, and I don't think he's saying that's a hard and fast rule. Clearly, were we to, God forbid, be attacked by Russia or whoever at 6 on a Friday, I don't think there's a serious suggestion that the Prime Minister wouldn't be informed until 9 a.m. on a Monday morning.
Right.
You know, there are always obviously going to be exceptions, but I think what he's trying to say is that he tries his best, despite his job, to carve out some time for his kids and for his wife. And, you know, I think most people would say that's probably quite a good idea.
I mean, one of the good things about living and working in Downing Street is that you kind of live where you work. And I don't know whether they're going to keep this sort of tradition whereby Keir Starmer, because he's got younger kids, is going to go into number 11, a bit like Tony Blair did. And actually, you know, the Chancellor will stay at number 10. I don't know how that's going to work. But, you know, he's lucky in that sense that, you know, if you live and work as the Prime Minister in central London, you've got your kids literally right there. You don't have to worry about commuting back to see them. You don't have to worry about, you know, spending time with them and then having to go back to work. I mean, it's literally walking up the stairs, up down the stairs.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I suppose he's in quite a fortunate position there that, yeah, you're right. If you are spending time with the kids upstairs and suddenly, you know, the bomb drops or whatever, you can nip downstairs and take control of the situation. So yeah, I mean, clearly, I think yesterday, I can tell you this for a fact, it was a pretty slow news day yesterday.
Right.
It's quite unusual for Keir Starmer to say things that aren't part of the normal script.
Right.
So I can understand why this has become more of a story than it is. And actually, when you look specifically at what he's saying, you know, as I say, I think it's more just about carving a little bit of time out for his kids. But obviously, where if duty called on a Saturday morning, and I'm sure if he was Prime Minister, he would be called upon to roll his sleeves up and get back behind his desk. I think part of the reason as well, I know from speaking to Labour sources, is that his wife and kids are Jewish, and Friday evening is quite a important family time in the Jewish community. So I think that's part of his thinking as well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because he doesn't make much of that. And I was reading something over the weekend about his kind of connection to the Jewish faith and how, you know, because it's quite a big deal that to go and celebrate whatever the religion is that you worship on a Friday night. You know, it's a bit like saying, you know, if you came out and said, I'm Catholic, I go to church every Sunday and I go to church every Wednesday, I think people would be quite surprised. But I would imagine the Labour machine probably quite enjoyed that interview that you did with Chris Evans on Virgin yesterday, because Chris Evans tends to get things out of people that perhaps other people don't. It wasn't a political interview, you know, he wasn't scoring any points. And he actually comes out of it looking a bit more human, perhaps, than when he went in.
Yeah, exactly. As I say, he tends to stick to his script. He can be a little bit wooden, a little bit stilted in these interviews. So he did actually relax a little bit. And yeah, it did show a human side to him. And it does open up a wider discussion, I think, on, you know, on work-life balance. Do we necessarily need a Prime Minister who is working 24/7, burning the midnight oil? Does that make them a better leader than one who maybe, you know, likes to spend a bit more time with his kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think people expect him to be burning the midnight oil, and I think people expect him to be fixing the country, because he keeps telling us how broken it is. So, I mean, if he's only going to work sort of part-time, as some people are calling it, I'm afraid that may not be good enough. But 2 days to go, Kevin. I mean, it's hard to believe. We've had a pretty kind of rambunctious 5 weeks, haven't we? You know, it was all a bit flat until Nigel Farage entered the fray. But it's been a pretty bizarre and, in times, unusual election campaign, hasn't it?
It has, and I'm glad from a news point of view that Nigel Farage did enter the campaign, or else I think it would have been a lot more dull.
It would have been, yeah, no question.
And it is quite remarkable, really, you know, that Labour were about 20 points in front at the start of the campaign, and yet, you know, despite the Conservatives and Rishi Sunak's best efforts, it looks as though roughly that's where they still are. It doesn't look as though the campaign and all the policy announcements and all the mud that's been flying around, I don't think it seems to have made much difference. And I think it probably confirms that the public had long since made up their minds. The polls themselves had been pretty static for the last 18 months or so. And yeah, as you say, 5.5 weeks of non-stop political debate doesn't seem to have changed that.
Although there's a couple of stories this morning in the paper saying 130,000 votes could make the difference between Labour getting a supermajority and Labour just kind of getting in, if you like, by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah, that's the way that the electoral system works, isn't it? There will be a lot of seats where, you know, a shift in 1 or 2% one way or another could make all the difference. So that's what the Conservatives are obviously pinning their hopes to. They've been pushing this supermajority warning for quite some time now. We actually had a story over the weekend which showed that an opinion poll which seemed to indicate that the warnings about a supermajority have actually made people more likely to vote Labour than Conservative. So we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose, come Thursday on the shakedown. But that is clearly, it's been interesting as well that the Conservatives have basically given up any hope of winning. For the last 3-4 weeks, I've basically just been hammering this message: don't let Labour have a landslide. You know, we need to have a strong opposition, which is quite a remarkable position, really. For
it really is. Let's have a look at some of the things that they were out doing yesterday. Keir Starmer was speaking in Buckinghamshire, appealing for your votes.
Change will only happen if you vote for it. And that is the message that we need to take to every doorstep these last few hours and days until 10 o'clock on Thursday night. Change only happens if you vote for it. We have changed the Labour Party. A Labour Party that proudly says country first, party second, that has a positive story about the future of our country to take forward. A changed Labour Party asking for the opportunity to change our country for the better.
Somehow that reminds me of Notting Hill. I don't know why. You know, a boy standing in front of a girl, you know, that one. How about Rishi? He's speaking in the East Midlands, appealing for your vote.
We have 3 days to save Britain from the danger of a Labour government. A Labour government that would hike up everyone's taxes by £2,000, would shunt our politics to the left, and they would change the rules to entrench themselves in power for a decade. We cannot let Britain sleepwalk into this. It is our job, it is our duty to wake people up to that danger. So I say to all of you, I say to every Conservative, don't surrender to Labour, fight for every vote, fight for our values, and fight for our vision of Britain.
He's obviously standing on a box. Ed Davey, here he is, before a Zumba class.
Oh, I've had a great day. I've been bungee jumping in Eastbourne. I've been Zumba dancing here in Wokingham. Both seats we can take from the Conservatives. And, you know, our message is, you know, when I came off the platform and did the bungee jump, it was something I've never done before. And I'm saying to people who've never voted Liberal Democrat before, come and vote Liberal Democrat. We've got great health policies, great policies on social care and carers. We've got policy to get the economy back on track. And we're talking about issues around the environment, ending the sewage scandals, for example. And I just say to people, take the plunge. Come and vote Liberal Democrat on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll have the bungee jump for you a little bit later on. But, Kevin, I suppose that sort of sums it all up, really, doesn't it? You know, the Tories are saying it's dangerous if Labour get in. The Labour Party is saying you have to vote if you want change. The Lib Dems are sort of looking at targeting 1 or 2 seats that they can do quite well in. 2 days from now, it's all over.
I know, and I think a lot of us will breathe a heavy sigh of relief that it is all over, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, it was interesting, isn't it? I think those clips just encapsulated each party's situation. I mean, I'd lost count of the amount of times Keir Starmer said change in that brief clip, whereas Rishi Sunak was very negative. You know, it's all about warning about the dangers of Labour. And Ed Davey, honestly, if I was put on the spot, I would struggle to think of one Lib Dem policy, but I can remember all the mad, crazy stuff, roller coasters and bungee jumps that he's done. I mean, fair play to them. They wouldn't have got much coverage otherwise, so at least he's had his picture in the paper quite a lot. But as I say, I'm not sure he's done much to highlight what the Lib Dems would actually do, where somehow they were to end up in power.
Right, indeed. I mean, the one sort of news story this morning on the political front, really, is on the front of the Telegraph. Royal Mail blamed for postal vote chaos. I don't know what this means really to the postal voting system, but apparently there's been so many delays that an awful lot of people have not actually got their postal vote, so they won't be able to make a vote by post.
Yeah, and that's very worrying, isn't it? We want people, as many people to be enfranchised as possible. Postal voting has become much more popular in recent years, and if it means that people can't vote at all, then that is extremely worrying. I know that in Scotland as well, a lot of postal votes didn't come in time before people went on their holidays. The summer holidays start a little bit earlier. School holidays start a bit earlier in Scotland.
Right.
And I mean, and seats on fine margins, that could make a big difference between one party winning and a different party winning.
Yeah, absolutely right. And also, front page of the Mail, Britain's forces not ready for a conflict of any scale. This is a story that's been pushed basically by the leader of the former leader of the Ministry of Defence, saying that, like I say, we just don't have the army. We just don't have the men, the boots on the ground to even put boots on the ground, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it's very worrying, isn't it? And it's a pretty down indictment after 14 years of a Conservative government that we don't appear to be able to go to war if, unfortunately, that was ever necessary.
Yeah.
And it's bad as well for Rishi Sunak, because yesterday one of his warnings was that a Labour government would be a threat to national security, and then we'll probably get a front page in the Mail saying that we're not in any fit state to actually launch any defensive action.
Yeah, absolutely right. Kevin, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Kevin Schofield there, political editor of the Huffington Post.